Hey everybody, the Not Quite Reverend Ron Peterson here doing part 2 of my emergency sermon on mass shootings. I call this one Mass Shootings, Symptoms of a Spiritually Diseased Society and Why American Christianity is Currently Useless in Fixing It. Last time I mentioned that Democrats say the problem with mass shootings is too many guns and too much easy access to high-capacity rapid-fire weaponry, while Republicans insist the problem is mental illness and evil people. And I'm suggesting that a possibility we haven't considered is that they are symptoms of a spiritually diseased society. Not sick, but diseased. Sick is, you know what, I have a cold. I'm not feeling quite up to snuff right now, but I'll get over this pretty quickly. By tomorrow, I might be up to 100% capacity. I'll get over this, right? Diseased is chronic. It's deep-rooted, very deeply organic, like cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease. And it's one of these situations where we say a disease is affecting my entire body, keeping it from functioning properly, and it needs specific treatment for me to improve my well-being. Okay, we are a spiritually diseased society. We are not functioning as we should. And we need to improve our spiritual state for our own well-being as a social organism, okay? And while I don't suggest a specific cure right now, one thing I say that we cannot count on currently is American Christianity. And I know that sounds harsh, especially coming from a pastor about his own faith, but somebody has to call this out, okay? There's a reason our churches are in decline. And I suggest it's because we are not adequately addressing the spiritual needs people have. My take is that progressive Christian pastors are simply not forceful enough in addressing issues of social justice out of fear, perhaps, of offending people and losing parishioners in that process. That includes me, by the way, and which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, right? Trying to atone for my sins, okay? On the other hand, evangelicals and fundamentalist Christians have absolutely no problem announcing their political views from a pulpit. They have no problem sharing those political leanings they have. They're the ones hanging with the party that's always trying to scare people into believing someone's trying to take something from them. They're trying to take your guns. They're trying to take your freedom. They're trying to take your rights, especially your religious rights. They're having a war on Christmas. They're trying to keep you from saying Merry Christmas. Okay, nobody's doing that. This is manufactured fear, okay? And we need to address that. And it's no surprise that they would use fear in politics because it works so well for them in religion, right? They're the ones saying, believe what we tell you to believe what we're saying, or you're going to burn forever in hell. And by the way, the idea that saving your own skin is the reason you should follow their religion, or the primary reason for following a religion, I cannot think of a more selfish reason to follow a faith. Or to follow Jesus, who said the exact opposite, warning that those who seek to save their lives will lose them. So fear and selfishness kind of makes up their religious worldview. And personally, I don't care about that. I don't care what they believe. It's their business. I don't believe it. It's not part of my own personal Christian theology. I discourage others from following that. I do not care what they believe. I just wish they'd keep it to themselves. But here's the problem. These are the people with a dominant voice in our national politics right now, influencing public policy via the Republican Party. And the inherent fear that motivates their religious ideology is bleeding into the rest of our society. As an example, anybody lose any guns lately? Get their taken away? Anybody lose religious rights? No, quite the opposite. Anybody seeing a threat to voting rights? Women's losing their rights to choose. So what we're seeing is manufactured fear of losing rights over the reality of what rights are actually disappearing, okay? They are influencing our society. Now, how does all this relate to mass shootings? Well, do you know what happens in your brain when you're in a state of fear? Your limbic system kicks into action. That's the more primitive, reactive part of your brain, often called the reptilian brain, right? That's because it's emotional. An emotional reaction takes over, forcing rational thinking to take the back seat. So what do you think the effects of would be if someone were in a perpetual state of fear and or mistrust like that all the time? especially a young mind that's not fully developed. Like imagine being a teenager who's already facing the changing in life and the emotionally distressing issues at home or at school, dealing with personal identity issues causing anxiety. Now throw in the manufactured fear and political anxiety those on the right are pumping into our collective minds. They're coming to take your guns. They're coming to take your freedom. They're coming to take your rights. And finally, add exposure to social media sites that reinforce those views, okay? Mass shootings are all but a predictable outcome. This fear is feeding on itself and it is killing us. This fear is keeping us in a perpetual, spiritually diseased state of being. And as a Christian pastor, I contrast that with the most common phrase in the Bible. And you know what it is? Some variation of either fear not or do not be afraid. So what does that tell us about those who are marketing and manufacturing fear for their own ends? And so we have to call that out. We have to call it out as boldly and as brazenly as what they marketed. Call them out because this is doing real spiritual harm to our country and our society. And I'll be talking more about this going forward because it's a real problem. But in the meantime, call this stuff out when you see it. Do not be afraid to do that. And I'll see you next time.